The age-old question, Marvel and DC, who's actually better? If you're a comic book fan, you've probably asked this question at some point in your life, and today I'm going to try and give you an answer. Before I get into it, there should be some timestamps at the bottom of your screen on the timeline so you can skip ahead to parts that you wish to skip ahead to. If they're not there though, I'll have them show up on the screen right now, so if you want to skip ahead, feel free to do that. With that being said, let's get into it. Marvel and DC are actually a lot more similar than you may think. I mean, they both make comic book movies and comics about various superheroes that they've created, but their similarities actually stem a little bit deeper than that. The heroes that they've created are actually a lot more similar than you think. There's a lot of nearly identical heroes on both sides that you may not have even realized were so similar. First, Iron Man and Batman. They're both rich, of course. They both don't have superpowers. They're both ladies' men, and they are both the leaders of their respective groups, Iron Man being the Avengers and Batman being the Justice League. Next, Dr. Fate and Doctor Strange. Both magical wizard guys. Both are doctors, maybe, apparently. But Dr. Fate has a pretty cool helmet, so I think he's my favorite out of the two. Hawkeye and Green Arrow. Both shoot arrows. Neither one has powers. Pretty much about it. Quicksilver and the Flash. Both pretty fast. Flash has lightning. Not much more of that one. With the similarities out of the way, now let's talk about the differences between Marvel and DC. Fundamentally, there are two huge differences between the two. Those two being how their respective heroes become heroes and their level of relatability. Marvel characters generally tend to be more relatable. They get their powers from accidents, they struggle with real life issues that pretty much everyone struggles with. They're just pretty much everyday people that something bad happens to and then they get their powers and become superheroes. DC, on the other hand, their characters tend to be more inspiring. They get their powers from outer space, they're more powerful than Marvel characters, and they don't really have those relatable issues that the Marvel characters have. They're more people that you would look up to rather than that you would relate to. The debate is often up to personal preference, but I'll try to give you my opinion here. Superheroes can only be so relatable. At the end of the day, they're still superheroes. Iron Man and Batman, they're still billionaires. Iron Man wears this suit of armor that he flies around in. None of us can do that. And Batman beats people to a pulp at night and just can go day after day after day sustaining insane injuries that he miraculously recovers from like that. I mean, if we tried to do that, let's be honest, we're not surviving that. Generally, I think I prefer what DC does here. They're more characters that you can look up to, and when you read their comics and watch their movies, you more escape reality instead of being reminded of it. Now let's talk about the villains of these universes. Let's be honest, DC wins this every day of the week. You got villains like the Joker, Harley Quinn, Lex Luthor, the list goes on and on and on and on. The depth of these characters, the complexity of these characters far outweighs and outdoes what Marvel has done. Marvel's villains tend to be more shallow, predictable. DC wins that by a mile. It's not even close to me. On Marvel though, you do have villains like Green Goblin, Kingpin, Thanos to an extent. Those are good villains, but the number and quantity of DC's villains and their top tier villains are just so much better than those of Marvel's that I think DC wins that by a landslide. Now let's talk about the recognizability of these universes. Marvel, you have characters like Spiderman, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, all very recognizable characters. And on DC, you got people like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, all very recognizable characters as well. Both are very popular. There's not really too much of a difference here. DC did it first though. They created Superman all the way back in 1938 and followed that up with Batman the year after in 1939. Marvel didn't really come to the scene until 1960s where they created the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Hulk, Iron Man, characters like that. Captain America and the Winter Soldier were created back in the 1940s, but that's pretty much it. Those aren't really their top tier characters, I would say, whereas DC really started off with a boom, and those two are the faces of their franchise back then and now. Now let's talk about comics. DC generally makes better comics than Marvel. They're more consistent. Marvel tends to be very inconsistent. They have good comic runs like Secret Wars, Ultimate Spider-Man, etc. But DC wins this one. In the movie industry though, Marvel crushes DC. It's not even close with what Marvel has done with the MCU and their whole connected cinematic universe. DC doesn't even rival that in the slightest. At least not yet. James Gunn, maybe his universe has some promise. If it all works out the way he says it's going to, then I think it could rival the MCU. But as of right now, the MCU has DC crushed in the live action movie category. On the animated side though, DC destroys Marvel. Their animated universe is phenomenal and Marvel doesn't really have anything there. DC makes phenomenal animated movies, animated TV shows, all of it. DC wins that by far. At the end of the day, it is largely up to personal preference. For me personally, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, as you can probably tell, but I also love characters like Batman, Superman, The Flash. So this is a really hard comparison for me to make and to decide who is better. But if I had to choose, I'd probably pick DC over Marvel due to their depth of characters like Batman and the depth of the villains like Joker. For me, those two are really unmatched in Marvel. They don't really have anyone that comes close. I think as a whole collective universe, DC wins by just a little bit. If you like this video, make sure to check out some of my other videos. It'll be popping up on the screen in about 10 seconds. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. I love to talk and interact with you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.